Guys, we did it again. Last year we innovated with neural networks in my Spanish channel, and we innovated as well with auto optimization for MQL5 in YouTube. We were the only ones bringing all that information here. Guess what? This time we are going to bring an online database for our trading bots in MT5 or wherever we want, but we are going to focus on this video on MT5. So guys, let me show you how to do this. First of all, I am in thebotplace.com and check that here I have my account, so you can simply create your account by registering. It's super simple. Once you have registered, you will need a plan because this website has a database only with a plan. But the good thing is that here everything is made simple. You will see what I mean in a bit. So check that now. I have here a current plan, but in your site you may not. So you just press here a button, or you just go down here to pricing. So check that these are the plans, and for example the $4.99 plan already includes a database. We have 100 documents, which is more than enough for our bots. But me, for example, I have the Ultra plan and I have 10,000 documents in the database. So you can see that the prices are not crazy and they are very fair. I recommend you checking the yearly price because you have some discounts. But yeah, having this said, what we need to do is that we need to start using the database that is here. But first of all, what we need to do is that we need to go to the documentation. If we press there in the documentation, we go to this website and check what? Here we have MQH files with functions to manage the database. So we already have all the files needed to handle the database. Check that, I pressed download, this is in Spanish, but it should be download, and here it will download you the utils.zip. So what we are actually going to do is that we are going to come to this folder and check that I already have it unzipped, but you press it, right click and extract all. Here we have all the information, we extract, and bam, here we have everything. So check that inside this utils folder that is generated, inside you have another utils folder. So what you need to do is copy this one. So check that here, I'm gonna go here, and I'm just going to drag this folder here. So now inside the utils, I just have the bot place and I have these three files. So check that here in the include, we just have utils, the bot place, and here we have these three files. Let's see these three files because they are very simple. So first of all, what you have here are these items, these functions to add items to the database. What we can find in this file are functions to manage the database. So for example, we have here get database item by ID. We can get some items. We can get items by a query ID as it is shown here. We can post items, which means we can add items in the database. We can edit items in the database, and we can delete items in the database. Basically everything we need to do. We have here this other file, which is the JSON MQH, and this is basically to help us manage the JSON in a very simple way. We will see that in a bit. And finally, we have here the request files, and check this out. We have here this string that we need to modify. So what we are actually going to do is that we are going to come here and we have, well, we are on our profile, and if we go down here, you have API key, you press it and check this out, boom, we have now the API key. So I'm going to copy this API key and I'm going just to put it here. And now that I have it here, I can use and I can make requests because look, indeed the database file is using this request file. So we compile, and here now we have a small test that I've created that I'm gonna be showing so that we can understand everything that we can do with the database. So first things first, what we have here is add database item. This function allows us to add an item to the database. And it is very simple. What we need to do is that we need to send a JSON object. Just in case, if you don't know what is a JSON, it is basically a notation to store and represent data. So for example, here we have a JSON object that has a first name, which is going to be John, and a last name, which is Doe. And here, for example, we have a list where we have several objects with name John Doe, first name Anna, last name Smith, first name Peter, and last name John. So we can store all the information that we want. So for example, what I've done here is that check here, add database item, and I've created a JSON object to put, first of all, a name, which is going to be Kevin, and then here I have an age, which is going to be 25. Something important, you may wonder, why do you have these symbols? The thing is that if you want to have a string with the same symbol that is used to create a string, you need to use this before the string symbol, the quote, the double quote, so that it works. So now here in the empty 5, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use this test, and I'm just going to drag it here, press accept, and it looks as if nothing has happened. But guess what? If we go here to our profile and we go to the analytics view, bam, here we can see a lot of information. So for example, we can see here that we can see all the database information. We can see that we have one document and that we have it here. We could edit the document. We can only edit. We cannot edit the ID or the date, but we can edit the information of the document. We can see the requests in the last 60 minutes and the daily request. But here I don't really have that many information. So let me log in my real account so that I can show you. So check that here I have way more bots, and these bots are actually sold. So I can see a little bit of information. So for example, I can see the API calls and all the information that is being used for those APIs. I could see the users that use the most my bot. So for example, these guys made this request in the last 7 days. And for example, I can see which bots are used the most and the accounts where they are being used as well. So we can see a lot of information in the analytics menu. But let's continue with MQL5 and how to handle this database. So for example, we have just added a document in the database. Let's try to edit this document. So you may wonder, okay, what do I need to edit a document? So for example, we can send here first the ID of the document and check that. Obviously, this is the first document. So here we can have the ID, and in this case, the ID is 0. So I'm going to put here a 0, and now check that what I'm sending is the new JSON object, but I'm putting a different name, I'm putting a different age, and the numbers change a little bit. And we have here a few new fields. So for example, we have numbers and a new field, which is test. So for example, we are going to press compile again, and the bot is going to be rerunning. And if we wait a little bit, bam, here we have the information. So we have ID, well, age, the name has changed, and now we have here numbers and the new field. Okay, so one thing that you may wonder is, what else can I do here? So for example, you could take information from the database to see it. So for example, what you need is just to set the ID of that document. As we said before, we just need to check the ID here, and in this case, the ID is 0. So I'm going to compile, and this is going to re-execute. And here we can see a print where we have the information and we have the actual document. The date comes in another format, but we have here new field, test, name, and numbers, which is the information that we have stored. But okay, you may wonder, look, I have this big string because indeed this is stored as a string, but I just want one element. For example, let's say that from all this information, I just want the age. How do I take the age? That's where we need to use this included file, the JSON file. These other functions were coming from the database, but now we need to use the JSON file. So here, what we actually have is a JSON stored in a string. So to get a specific value, what we are going to do is that we are going to call JSON get value, and we send the JSON object in the string, and we say what is that we want. So for example, I want the element age. So I just put here age and check that now we are gonna be receiving that. Let me recompile. Let's wait a little bit, and boom, here we have it, age 25. Let's say that I want to change this, and instead of age, I want the name. So for example, let's replace here age by name. We compile, Pam. And here now I have the name, which is Kevin de la Copa Malam, which is the one that is stored here. Excellent. So what else is it that we can do? You may wonder as well, hey Kevin, but look, building these JSONs this is difficult. Like, it is not an easy job. I know. And that's why here we have this function which is dict to JSON. So basically a dictionary to JSON. We have dictionaries in MQL5, but to simplify it, we are using here a string. And look, here the string, it just simply has name equal and then the value. So key equal value, key equal value. So this builds an array of strings, and then with this function we build the object. So let's check that out. So for example, we are going to send this object here, we are going to compile, and boom, here you have it, JSON dict, and based on the information that we have sent, we have here Kevin age 25. So let me put here, for example, Luis, and let me put, for example, 50. So compile, wait a little bit, and we will have that, unless I've made a mistake, it took a while. So here we have Luis and then age 50. That's right. So now that we have this information, we are ready to store it in the database. How are we going to do it? With the add database item function that we saw before. But check that now, we have built the object in a different way. So we are going to compile. Let's wait a little bit. And now if we go back here, we should see the information. And here we have another document which has name Luis, age 50. And one thing that we can do is that we can edit the information here if we want, or we can delete the document if we want. Okay, but with JSON, we have a lot of information and we have a lot of things. For example, one of those things can be arrays. So check that here, I have an array of cars, which at the moment is empty because everything is commented. So let me remove the comments so that we have here the array of cars. And what we are actually going to do is that this MQL5 array of files is going to be transformed to a JSON list. So we are using to JSON array, this function. And look, I'm sending here this cars array, and here I will receive a string which will be the JSON for the cars. So I compile, wait a little bit, and boom, we have here the formatted list of the array. And here we can see Porsche, Lamborghini, and Ferrari. Got it. So, but let's try to think that this array is empty. And what I actually want to do is that I want to be adding things. Look, it may be difficult to add things, but here it isn't, because we have the function JSON push. We are going to be pushing elements into the list. What we need is this JSON string, which is the array that we have here. We send it here in the first parameter, and we send whatever we want to store in this list. So for example, we have here Porsche, Lamborghini, Ferrari. That's right. So let me compile here, and we will see the list getting filled. It may take a while, sometimes it takes... here it is. We had here the array empty, then we added Porsche, as we saw here, then we added Lamborghini, as we saw here, and then we added again, and finally we added Ferrari, which is the last element. Okay, but we may want as well to remove an element, and let's say that I want to remove the first one. So for example, I have here JSON remove first, and this will remove the first element, which is Porsche. So we compile, we wait a little bit, and boom, we can see here that in this last print, Porsche is no longer there. So we have removed the first element. But okay, let's say that we are getting the information from the database. We have this cars JSON object, but I want to transform it in an actual array that I can use here in MQL5. So here I'm creating an array which is empty, and we are going to say that is empty here, 1 our cars array size, and it will be 0. And then I'm going to use JSON to array, and it's going to transform that. So look, I take the JSON list, and what I do here is that I pass the array of strings that I want to use to put the information there. So here this array will be filled, and now we will see there all the items, which are 3, and then we will see each item here printed. So let's compile. And what we are actually going to do, here we have it. We have cars array size 0, cars array size 3, and we can see each one Porsche, Lamborghini, Ferrari. That's right. So we are almost in the end. What we can do here is that we can see that, look, we are going to add a new item calling add database item. We have here this array of strings and we are trying to create a new object. Do you remember the function? It is dict to JSON. So what we are actually doing here is that, look, name equal Kevin, cars, and now I'm just concatenating the list of cars that we created before in the JSON format. So this function will create everything and then it will add it in the database. So let's compile. It may take a bit, but if we go back here, bam, we can see it. We have now 3 items in the database and we have here cars, Porsche, Lamborghini, and Ferrari. To finish, let's see how to delete an item, and it is very simple. We just need to send the ID of the item that we want to delete. So for example, we are going to delete here the item 0, which is going to be, well, the item with the ID 0, which is this first one. So what I'm actually going to do is that I'm going to compile again. It may take a bit, but bam, here it is. It's no longer there. And we can say that the API requests have been made. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, debotplace.com. Now we can save information in our database. And you may wonder, but Kevin, why do we need to save information in a database? It depends on you. But for example, one way of doing copy trading bots is, for example, having here, this is the father which sends the trading operations, and here we have the kids, the children, that copy the operations from the server. They actually check the database, and it is as simple as this. And now we can do it with the bot place. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, give it a like, share, subscribe, and we see each other in the next one.